Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. Hi Arnold.
Hey Josh, hey, how are you?
Nice to see you. Good, good. Just for everyone watching, this is our first attempt at a podcast. We really want you guys to get to know us. I'm Josh, the Thailand coordinator, and who are we here with today? The fantastic Arnold. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Arnold. I'm the director of Impact Teaching. Really passionate about, working abroad, living abroad, authentic experiences. And been going at this for many years. So I look forward to, using this kind of new format, like Josh said, a kind of a new thing we're trying to do, I think, to give you more insights because we talk to candidates, we have videos up on YouTube, we've got blogs, you got the website, but we wanted to create a bit of a format where you hear more background, you hear more details, and get to know us a bit more.
Yeah, I think when I speak to teachers, they do already feel like they know us from interviews, from videos, but I think we can take that to another level. I think that's what we're hoping to achieve today. Yeah, so I think what we could start off with, Arnold, is a bit about your story and how we got to where we are today. Where did it all begin from you? If you start kind of, teenager, we don't have to go younger than that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I'm Dutch, right? So my mom is Dutch, my dad's Kenyan. Grew up in The Hague, and I think from a young age, like many people, I guess I was always interested in traveling. Um, had various experiences. I think the most early one, the most significant one, was when I went interrailing with a really good friend of mine. We went to France, to Italy. We even got took a ferry to from Greece to Turkey. We traveled a lot. It was super exciting. That was when I was about 17. Then I graduated high school, and I missed my graduation actually to go to a summer camp in the US. Yeah, which was just amazing. I was always really interested in, still am really interested in politics and America and all that kind of stuff. So the
But now
camp for
the
me was a chance to,
good time at the moment. Lots of interesting things
yeah,
going.
for sure, absolutely. So, but yeah, I went there for summer camp, and yeah, it was really full on, really, really intense, but brilliant, really. Just a chance to be out in nature, meet lots of Americans, meet lots of people from all sorts of other countries. It was about 50-50, and had
How
a wonderful time with that, really.
how old were you then, roughly, with
18,
that?
yeah, 18 I was at that time. And yeah, it was really good. I mean, it was the kind of the quintessential thing like we're doing, I guess, to a large extent now, because it was a real work experience, meeting people, but then also traveling, and kind of seeing the country as well.
And it's kind of come full circle a bit because we actually were in touch with your old camp recently, weren't we?
Exactly, yeah. And I think one of the interesting things there was that basically the camp they showed me around. They did a bit of a pan video call where they showed me the whole camp and what it looks like, and it basically hadn't changed at all, which was quite interesting because obviously it is how many years ago? 3 years ago. No, it was I guess it's about 26 years ago at the moment. So yeah, it was really great that it still looked the same and it still had the same appeal. And I find it really interesting actually with the American camp because obviously so much has changed, especially when it comes to technology and all those kind of things. But the essence of the camp was exactly the same, like, being out in nature, and just having fun and connecting with people. And I think that's kind of, I guess, in terms of what we're talking about today and what our programs are all about, that's, I think it's a real through line. And it's almost kind of the connection, the real connection. And I think that's one of the things I'm so passionate about, and probably more than ever, I think, in terms of we'll speak about maybe later a bit about the pandemic and sort of what life has become for many people, which is basically kind of what we're doing now in a way too, but like talking through a screen, sitting down, working, and maybe not really having that authentic connection. And I think the things that we do with these programs, they're really they go to that authentic connection with people. And yeah, the US campus is definitely a prime example of that for sure.
Exactly. And I think, we when we've been speaking to these camps, a lot of their ethos is no
Yeah,
phones.
definitely.
You're only allowed to go on your phone in the evening or whatever, and the kids aren't allowed. And I think that's so great. I think, you know, that's we're really lacking that. So it's great that even 26 years later, it's a similar kind of vibe still going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a really interesting one because that's one of the things like I didn't know how people would take that, but I get the sense so far that people like it. Like people like that. Like when I talk about that in interviews and say, okay, there's going to be no phones at this camp, people seem to not mind that. So that's quite quite cool, I think.
The resistance from the children. I wonder if there's a
Yeah.
bit of resistance at first, and then I'm sure they have a great time.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
sure,
mean, oh, my son is year 3 now, and I think, based on my expectation, it would be kind of the same ultimately, that there would be resistance, but in the end, that there would be buy into it. But yeah, in terms of my own story, I think the next stop for me was Israel and the kibbutz in Israel. And yeah, I mean, I liked all my experiences abroad. It's hard to rank them actually, but this was very near the top in terms of just what it was. In terms of the weather, the whole experience, amazing people I met at the kibbutz. So it was just yes, yeah, similar in terms of the American one, that it was very outdoorsy. I was working in a zoo at times. I was working before breakfast out in the fields. I was doing all sorts, but I think it was just a super interesting experience, and really nice people again from all sorts of places in the world. And then I went to university, studying social science, political science. Still, yeah. So I think I was
where was
definitely
that?
one. Sorry,
Was
yeah.
that in London? Was that?
No, this was in Utrecht in the Netherlands. It was great. It was definitely one of those cases where, like a lot of people, I think I went to do a degree in something I was super interested in, and like I said, still I'm very interested in, but like maybe without a very clear cut career plan, other than like because what I had been doing and what my natural interests were, there was probably an idea to maybe eventually move abroad. And towards the end, I was looking at master's programs, and my sister lives in the UK and lived in the UK back then as well. So the UK became a very natural candidate, and I'd been to London and I really enjoyed it. So that was something I had then lined up, and I got an offer, and it was really exciting. But then I was thinking, okay, am I going now, or am I going to take one more year to do something else? And basically, I was sort of living with a great guy, Brandon from China. 3 years in uni, every year he was my flatmate, and I'd heard so much about Shanghai and China and the life, and it all basically sounded very exciting. So yeah, I decided to go to teach in China at that point. Um, I knew at least I knew it was going to be at the very maximum a year. It actually, in my case, ended up only being half a year. Sometimes I feel a bit guilty about that now because our programs, especially for China, they need to be for a full year. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I did 6 months, but yeah, it was just really mind blowing. I think what I always tell people when it comes to these programs teaching abroad, I'm quite a strong believer in kind of following your gut feeling and just doing something you're excited about. And why you might be excited about it can vary so much from person to person. And I think soon we'll be speaking about your journey in more detail, Josh, and what you loved about China and about Thailand. But for me, it was sort of about pretty much the kind of the social science related interest, just being in China and seeing what people really love about China. So how people really live in China, because I think when I'm thinking about these programs and the experiences and why I think it's so valuable, I was thinking about kind of traveling. And let's say when I was interrailing, the best moment when you're traveling, at least for me, like it used to be like being in a taxi and talking to an Italian guy about his football team or something, like talk, trying a bit of French at the bakery or something, and then having a bit of a striking up a slight conversation with someone and trying to see how it goes. And I think these kind of work abroad programs, they're kind of that, like, times 10 or times 100. It's exponentially more of that, but it's the same type of that dynamic where you're really immersed in the place. And I think with China, especially at that time, well, China still, of course, but like China is such a fascinating place that was growing so quickly. It was just when they joined the WTO in 2002 and 2003. And yeah, there was just such energy and palpable change in China at that time. And I really had a great experience there.
Yeah, fantastic. I think I totally echo your kind of idea of the kind of trying to assimilate speaking a bit of the language, trying the food, having a conversation with people. When you're traveling, that's fun and that's great. But when you really live somewhere, it kind of builds up this side of you didn't know existed. And I think that is the benefit of these kind of longer term things. But my question for you, Arnold, is, and I think this will lead on to how Teach English in China came about. But how was your experience finding a job and getting a job and the whole process and the kind of landscape at that time that you saw something that you could do about it?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I had an amazing time. I really love my time in China, like I said. I think especially in hindsight, I think the reason I started teaching English in China a few years later was basically because I think the way I did it was a little bit random, basically. Like I was browsing the jobs on the internet and I found some jobs. I really want to go to Shanghai. I ended up getting a job offer in Wuhan and living in Wuhan. But I think, yeah, basically I found a job at a job site, applied to the school, and then I went. And I think, especially like I said, in hindsight, I felt there was quite a lot of gaps in what I was doing. Fundamentally, sort of not knowing if the school was legitimate, not knowing if I got the right visa, not knowing anyone, and not knowing what was expected of me and if I was going to be able to do it, basically. So, yeah, so I felt like there was quite a lot of gaps in this kind of process that I did, and that there was definitely scope to maybe have make people have better and smoother, especially, and less stressful or worrying experiences by offering kind of to fill in these gaps, basically, that do naturally exist if you do it the way I did it. So that was fundamentally the concept of Teach English in China, and by extension now Impact Teaching. Yeah, to basically take the stress out of it, to pair you up with other people who are doing it, and to make sure that you're going to a legal school, and you've got the right visa type. And also, I think what I know basically in latter years talking to people, I think what can help is that just knowing the sense that there is someone to talk to if you run into a problem with a school or you're having a tough day, that there is a bit of a support network and someone that people that can back you up.
Definitely. So did you not really have any connection with anyone outside of China? Was it all you and just the school? There was no agency or anyone supporting you at all?
No, it was basically just me and the school. And yeah, I arrived and I remember thinking, oh, they picked me up from the train station, which was great. So yeah, but that was literally the first time like I had any real connection with them. I mean, I think I had an interview with them, but it was pretty basic. Like there wasn't too much in terms of pre-departure contact with them really, until they picked me up from the train station in Wuhan.
Could people do that now? I mean, is it possible people could kind of follow your path and just find a school in China? Is that even possible anymore, or has the landscape changed so much?
I'd say first of all, it is possible, 100%. You can do that. I think the landscape has changed quite a lot subsequently in that. I remember this well actually when I was in China in 2018 and I was talking to our government partner, and they told me, everything's changing, everything's going to get centralized in cities. There will be one hub that recruits all the teachers. And I remember thinking, ooh, I don't know if I, like this trend necessarily in terms of our business model and how we were doing it. But I do think it was correct, like what they said back then, because it has gone more and more the way that either you have less now, less right now, but in the recent past, you had government bodies in the city doing all the recruitment for all the schools. Or nowadays, more in China, maybe you have commercial agencies in China that do the recruitment for many schools. So having a direct link directly with the school, I do think it has become rarer, especially when it comes to China. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after COVID in China, before COVID, of course, with Teach English in China. And I contacted the school directly because I was trying to maybe considering getting back. And I said to them, I want to work for you, just you, because I worked at 3 schools across the city. I said, is it possible? Can we make it happen? I think it'd be great. And they basically said no. They were like, you need to go through the Chinese agency again. And I said, I don't want to particularly do that. So I think it has changed more, like you said. But
Yeah.
I think next, we've kind of touched on how Teach English in China started. tell me a bit about that and then how it's evolved into impact teaching and yeah, what we're doing today.
Yeah, I think that the start of it was really that I worked in Wuhan. I had some friends, obviously in Wuhan, people I knew, sort of working in this industry. So the first point of call was kind of working with them, and I think in the very first year it was pretty much Wuhan, and then we had, we went through different iterations. We had an American an American professor who was organizing summer trips in China, so we worked with her. So it was a case of acquiring different partners over time, and it's inevitably a case of sometimes the partnership is great and sometimes it doesn't work out as well. So it changed, it chopped and changed a bit, although there was a few really long-term kind of partnerships that I really enjoyed tremendously. Especially there was our partner in Suzhou, for example. We worked with them for a good 13 years or more. So there was a few really long-term ones. And certainly the Chinese government was a key one. Like in 2011, we started working with the Beijing government, basically their sourcing of teachers. So that was a great partnership as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I'm guessing people can imagine teaching this in China was solely for helping people go to China.
Yeah.
Things changed in 2019. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think, I really want to, obviously do a good job. So like we focus on China, expanded the market, made it more choice rich, like in terms of private schools, state schools, training centers, all these kind of things. But obviously in 2019, so having started in 2005, we reached a point where it was kind of not the work was done, but we had a structure in China which was sort of not going to evolve or change that much necessarily anymore. So we started looking at other options, Vietnam, Thailand, started working with a course like offering jobs there. So that was in the works, signed a contract, things were ready. We were thinking about how this was going to affect the name, obviously, of the company because it was called Teach English in China. So that couldn't quite work. So that was all underway. Yeah, the contract was signed. We're working on things, and this was basically the November, December 2019, and rolling into 2020. Some plans. I think you were obviously in our cohort in China at the time, and then yeah, things kind of took a slight turn for the worse, unfortunately, in terms of obviously the whole situation with this, and then unfortunately, obviously you were experienced that more as a teacher as well at the time in 2020.
Yeah, we'll have more on that when we talk about me. But today we're getting to know you a little bit more. So, kind of, yeah, we've talked about this. I obviously know this, but I want to kind of expose it for everyone. So, the year before COVID was the most, the business was doing really well. COVID obviously kind of hit hard. How's it? How the kind of how have you got out of COVID? What's happened after COVID, and we're still here today? Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Well, it was extremely, extremely stressful and extremely challenging because, fundamentally, like I said, the impact was on the seeds were sown. It was sort of started to happen a little bit, but fundamentally, when the pandemic hit, it was a company that had one focus, which is sending teachers to China. So, having China, as we now know, then close its borders effectively for 3 years and no flights in that, it was very, very tough. But I also think, and that's when we started expanding to other places. But I do think it's an interesting thing to maybe touch on and pause on for a second because I think it was very stressful, really, not what you want at all from a business point of view. But I do think, in a weird way, it also kind of strengthened my belief that it is so important. The sort of, as we touched on, the kind of the cultural exchange you have, the conversations you have with people, you get to know them a bit, you chat, like, and then when you're living somewhere, that's much more of that, much more of that. And I think what we obviously all saw, like, all lived through, was that in 2020 that all stopped. And I feel like the most interesting thing to me with that is that sometimes, like, because that was a time, like, I used to go to China regularly because my wife is also from China, so we go there, regularly. And that there was a period there where it basically stopped for me for 5 years. Like, I didn't go to China between late 2018 and 2023. So I guess 5 years. Yeah. So And what I experienced in that period was that, I tried to obviously gather all the news about China, but I felt like I was losing my connection with China, and I was almost more like seeing China as someone who didn't have a strong connection with it. And I feel like what's so valuable in these kind of programs and these kind of experiences is that you feel you go there and you really build like a connection and an understanding of a place and a kind of a kinship with a place in a way that's very special and very good for the world, especially at a time like this, like what we're living through, all the things you see in the news. Because I certainly am someone like I lived in China, and I lived in Israel, and I think my view of those things is kind of informed somewhat by the people I met there and the sort of the personal experiences I've had. And if I didn't have them, I probably would have a different take on it just because like you don't connect in the same way. And you don't maybe, yeah, you don't have that connection with it. So I felt like the pandemic was almost like a kind of like an experiment in that sense where you saw like when that's all taken away, like what happens. And it's just basically people sitting behind the screen and you know, using their kind of their assumptions about other people, and it's not the best way I think to go. So yeah, that sort of helped me kind of get through it. But on a very practical level, it was looking for places that were open at the time, and Poland is one of those that was, and it's been interesting because it hadn't occurred to me at all really before then, but it's definitely one of our top two, probably more. Well, it's in the top three. Thailand also certainly, but I think it's one of our really popular markets. So it's sort of that's kind of how it came about. Adding places that were open, that were exciting, that felt there was a good market, and that became basically Poland, and then Thailand, and then Hungary, and then Vietnam, and then obviously now we're building more international schools on top of that.
Yeah, fantastic. I think maybe just expand a tiny bit on the different destinations, a couple of thoughts on each of them, just to give people a bit broader understanding. Obviously, China first, and then just a little bit more on each of them.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So China, look, there's so much to say about it. I think it's just a place that more and more it's on the cutting edge of everything. There's so much, technological development. It's such a striving culture, and I think it makes it so absolutely fascinating to live there. And in terms of being a teacher there, it just makes it really rewarding because people really want to learn, and it's a great place to be. Poland, in a strange way, I always say this during doing interviews with candidates because I really felt that, like being in Poland with you, a year and a half ago. I felt that it's obviously a very different part of the world, different culture, different everything, but it had a similar quality as China when I first went there, in that it's a place you can feel it's on the rise. You can hear it in the way people speak, that sort of there's an optimism, there's really good infrastructure. It's just kind of it's happening in Poland. And I feel that is reflected in the sort of the amount of applications we get for it and how excited people are. And also how people stay there because like we started in 2020. I'd say a lot of the people, who went early, either they stayed or they stayed multiple years. They stayed longer than they thought. Or someone like Laura, who was in our first batch of teachers who went there, she still goes there on holiday regularly. So it definitely leaves a very positive impression. Um, Thailand, obviously, hopefully I'll see you there in August, which I'm really looking forward to. In my experience, it's basically I went there after my time working in China. I went on a bit of an holiday, so I didn't teach there. But in my experience, it was basically what I thought it's going to be. I thought amazing weather, friendly, great food, relaxed, and it's all those things and more. It's just such a rich place. I mean, I only scratched the very surface of that in terms of my own time in Bangkok and a bit in Krabi. But yeah, I think it's just so much diversity, so much nature, so amazing in that sense.
It's hot.
It's hot,
Too
yeah. Exactly. So Hungary, I think, is a really exciting one as well, in the sense that you're working in Budapest, the European capital. We've got a really good partner there that offers very very hands-on support. So you have a job, you get your accommodation taken care of, you get to travel. It's close to everything. It's an affordable part of Europe. You can take kind of a train to Prague for something like 30 pounds or something. So I think you did a post about this the other day. Of course, one of our teachers, like the travel she did in a place like
yeah.
Hungary was really extensive.
Yeah, you're right in the middle of it all, of that part of Europe. So yeah, I've not been yet. Have you been to Budapest yet?
Not yet, not yet. So this is definitely on my to-do list to do very soon because it is a place that I really want to visit and hopefully, in the very, very near future.
Brilliant. And then Vietnam, I think we should touch on, but I know there's a bit more restriction on
Yeah.
qualification, so it's
Yeah.
not as easy for people to start there. Tell us a little bit about
I
Vietnam.
think absolutely. So Vietnam, I had a really good friend from the Netherlands, but and I visited him, and it was incredible. I mean, it's just such a great place, and this is again a place where we get a lot of interest in it. A lot of people want to go there, so we're keen on it, really keen on it. But this is a place where we feel that it's hard sometimes to get it done because the rules seem to be changing quite a lot. We had a school, for example, that we've had some send a lot of teachers to that was great, but they do seem to kind of change the goalposts a bit in terms of the requirements. It started with fresh graduates being okay. Now it was like 1 year teaching experience, and then it's kind of 1 year specific teaching experience. So this is one thing that, as an agency like ours, sometimes we're trying to figure stuff out. To be honest, like we're trying to find like what is the market, is the government changing rules? Are there things changing? But that's a market that we think has a ton of potential. We're really keen on it, but from a practical point of view, it's been a bit harder to find partners that really where it really worked all together.
Yes, I think we'll touch more on the US, China summer camps just at the end of the call and the international programs. But I
Yes,
think
of course. Yeah.
what's relevant with Vietnam and that kind of triggered this thought in my head was I think it'd be good if you spent a minute or two telling who is this for, because obviously Vietnam is maybe not for some people, but Thailand might be, generalize. Who do we help? Who are our customers? Who do we turn into teachers? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, look, if you're listening to this, if you're watching it, thanks for your interest. And I do Zoom calls and I go to lots of universities around the UK, and I always love talking to people about it because I think it's such a great experience. So, effectively, it's for everyone. It's for everyone that's interested in doing something like this and wants to get involved. I always kind of say like when it comes to teaching and or working at a camp, we can have a 30-minute or 40-minute video call about your CV and like your background and if it's right for you. But I think what it all boils down to fundamentally is, does it excite you? And if you go into a classroom, would you like being there? And it doesn't matter if you're going to become a teacher in the longer run or if you want to do it for 1 year or for 6 months. As long as you want to be there at that moment in time, you're going to have fun and you're going to be engaging, you'll have a very good chance of success. So basically, it's for everyone that wants to work with us. We really are keen to provide a wide array of options. So there are options for people who are graduates. There's options for people who are not graduates. There's options for native speakers. There's options for non-native speakers, and there's options for people who are very experienced and want to maybe work at an international school. But there's also options for people who have no teaching experience whatsoever, which was basically the boat I was actually in. And I think similar for you, right? When you went, like not too much
No
teaching.
teaching experience,
Yeah.
none. Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
that's key. I think it really is. We're motivated to help everyone. I think in the past, you tell me, but it's predominantly graduates, kind of early 20s. But I think in recent years, I've noticed such a wide variety of people from all over different countries, different ages, different backgrounds. And I think that's something that excites me. I know excites you too.
Definitely. Yeah.
We will talk about the negative side of this. I won't go into it now, a bit later on, about some restrictions that certain places have. I think we should talk more about that later. But yeah, I echo that. I think it's really, really exciting when you send me people's information, their CVs or bios. I love to see where they're from and their backgrounds, what they've done, and yeah, you get to speak to them all. I guess that's part of your job you enjoy
Yeah,
interviewing.
I love that. Absolutely. I think it's so interesting. I think every day when I think about my day and I plan the day and I think about the things I look forward to about it, the interviews, like candidate interviews are near or at the top of the list just because I think it's so interesting. And like I said, I think from my point of view, we're going to have a conversation in detail about your CV, about experiences you have, how you might deal with certain situations. But I think, for me, like what it kind of comes down to is like if we're having a really engaged conversation and you are motivated, you're reliable, you show up for the call, you commit to the program, you pay a fee or hold a deposit. I feel like, you're showing that you want to make this happen and you've got what it takes to happen. But yeah, the calls are just incredibly interesting because I talk to so many people who have different backgrounds, different stages of life, like you said. Nowadays, I think there's more variety. I sometimes talk to people who got a graduate job, worked in finance or at a bank, for 10 or 15 years, and they just feel like I'm not getting out of life what I want doing this. I want to do something a bit different. So you get that. Talk to sometimes people who work for the police and want to kind of change it up and do something different. Obviously, like you said, a big group still remains, like quite recent graduates. That is quite a big group. Um, but also, yeah, in all sorts of part of the world. And yeah, I really enjoy it. I mean, just hearing a bit about life in Texas or in Johannesburg or or in all sorts of different places that I talk to people about. I find that really fascinating.
And just interesting, how many people do you normally speak to? Like in a week, is it same each day, or does it kind of some days are really busy, some days are quiet?
Yeah, it varies. I think we can apply for all these programs to have slightly different deadlines, but I think naturally quite a lot start either in the summer or in August, September. So let's say the first months of the year, January, February, March, April, those tend to be the busiest. I think usually I have maybe 10 calls around that time of year. Now it's a bit less. I have two or three today. So, but yeah, it's usually busier times. It's maybe 10 to 10 a week, and quieter times it's maybe
Okay.
five, six a week.
Not 10 a day, that would be a lot.
No, no, not to do. It is getting more, so we'll maybe get to that point, yeah, hopefully, but not now.
Yeah, that'd be great. I
Yeah.
mean, we wouldn't be complaining, would we? Fantastic. So I think what I would like to talk about next is three of the positives, the things you really love about being impact teaching. And then I think we're going to talk about three negatives and three struggles. And I think
Right.
that's balanced. I
Exactly.
mean, what do you think? Do you think we should go three positive, three negative, or
Yeah.
positive, positive,
Let's
negative?
do the positives and then yeah, let's do all the positives maybe first. Although I noticed I think I've sort of touched on two of them
Yeah,
already.
that's
I think
absolutely.
the interviews definitely is one of them for sure. Another one is the like I said, the general mission that I really feel so strongly that it's important, like to have the connections, build in-person connections, like for people in the world to go somewhere, do work where they can feel I'm making a difference. I remember the names of some of the kids I worked with at the camp, in the US or in China, certainly as well. I still remember it, and I feel like that just shows you something that it was very meaningful. It really mattered at the time, and um, sometimes tell this story about how my time in China was kind of summed up very accurately, sort of most clearly in my mind by this girl who was I did the English corner in China, which is kind of an open chat, open mic night, effectively, where you're just kind of talking for 45 minutes about something. So she attended one of those sessions rather than actually being in my class, even. So she didn't know me well. She just saw me do some of those sessions, and after one of them, she stopped me and she kind of said like Arnold, like I'm going to Harvard. I'm definitely going to Harvard. And she then found me on social media a decade later, and she was studying in America, and this is really summed up like exactly what I liked so much about teaching in China is that you really have that. It's very much instilled in the culture where like at 9 years old, she had that plan and she did it basically. So yeah, being part of that and working with, with children like that was just amazing. So I think, those kind of connections you build up. Maybe extending that a little bit in terms of the connections, I also feel obviously we've had plenty of long car rides together where we never really struggled for conversation. Obviously, football was quite a large part of that too. But in terms of like living abroad, working abroad, the work we're doing, I think it really builds up like a mind, sort of a camaraderie or some sort of similar mindset that I feel strongly like, the orientation days. I think it's always kind of a full on day. I'm sure if you're new and you're going to China or you're to Thailand, you're going to London for a day, it's maybe a bit nerve wracking, but I always feel like at the end of it, when we all go to the pub, it's a lot of fun. Like, you're there with like-minded people, and I always feel that the people who come back to help us, like with the orientation day, even if I've not seen them since the interview and spoke to them for a few minutes, like one to one at the orientation day, when you then meet up, afterwards, there's just hours of conversation there. So that I think is really a nice feeling, like just doing something with kind of um, with very like-minded people. So
Absolutely. Arnold, I can say from experience that the orientation day I did as a candidate, not as someone within the company, was one of the most exciting days. I'll always remember it. It was like a warm, I think it was, yeah, it was a warm day, late summer. I got the train from Cambridge down to London, kind of nervous. You've got to meet new people and you've got to be confident and try and make friends. But it was just exciting, so exciting because it's the beginning of your adventure. So I just think, yeah, being part of that, you hosting that must be a real buzz, knowing that these people are beginning. And I think we've been, since COVID, struggled to get up to the numbers.
yeah.
The last one I did, there were so many people, it was a massive group. I didn't have time, even in the whole day, I didn't have time to speak to everyone. And I think we've always, tried to get back up to that. And I think this year, this summer, won't be quite as big, but I think, be bigger, 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 bigger. And we're
Mm.
trying to get that's just a bit more complicated now. There's various countries, isn't it? It's less focused.
It is, yeah. No, exactly. But it kind of goes to the thing we've been speaking about it. I do think, and I think people probably can resonates maybe with people that I think COVID it changed something. People are slightly different. I think like when we did the orientation days pre-COVID, 80 to 90% of people that were on the program which would be there for that. Whereas now, I hope this 19th of July when we're doing it, I'm really looking forward to. But I need to get to the final numbers. But in recent years, it's been a bit less, like a lower percentage. So I feel like, yeah, it's just kind of a different thing. But I think once you do it, it's like with the orientation day, but also the whole experience. It is a bit of effort, obviously, to make it to London and to do this. And it is, like we said, it's maybe a bit nerve-wracking, but like the whole experience, I think it's worth it and way more than it, like in terms of what you get out of it and the start of it. Um, so yeah, so those are some of the key things. I think we'll talk about more as we speak more. I'm sure there will be some more, but in terms of the more challenging aspects, there are some things. I mean, one element is certainly that it is quite a personal experience for the teachers, for me and for you and now with Corey joining us. Like it is like a couple of people like working with you intensively, trying to make kind of a life goal happen, a dream happen. And I think, I remember a lot of the interviews like quite well or like, quite vividly. So if then it doesn't work out for someone, which of course sometimes happens because we're working with larger numbers of people in different places, it's very disappointing and it's painful sometimes. Like I think kind of this relates obviously to some extent also to reviews and things like that. I think we're doing quite well. I think the fact that we're passionate about it, that we show up, that we are transparent, that we do our very very best, I think is evident. I think in the reviews, and I think in the way people generally view us. I think, but I think at the same time, sometimes it doesn't work out. And therefore, a negative review has happened here and there, and that's tough. Like that is not nice. Like that will ruin my day. Like if I see that and if I know the person and I know with all the intentions and all the purpose they came into the process with, and it doesn't work out, it's very disappointing. I think it's hard to because there's different situations and there's different individual cases, but I think that a source of them, of the more negative reviews, sometimes has been where the goalposts change. For example, for Poland, there was a period where people from African countries could easily come to Poland. It was one of the best things that we spoke about when we were in Poland, that we met or met some people from African countries who moved to Poland and had a wonderful experience, and it was great, and it was great to see that. But then I think maybe that very year or like soon after that, like the rules sort of started to change slowly, and sometimes these things that don't happen in the most transparent way, and there was just started to be initially like temporary hold-ups at the embassies, and then they became structural and sort of insurmountable in the end. For example, in South Africa, so that changed, and that obviously meant a lot of people had a disappointing experience, and yeah, that wasn't the best. But that's something that we will work. We will give all we got, to prevent stuff like that happening. But it is something that has happened occasionally.
I think, ever since I've been working with Impact, it's been 2 and a bit years, all of the negative reviews have come from Poland.
Yeah.
And I think they're not necessarily directed towards me because I haven't had personal contact with them. It's all been you. But that sometimes the reviews can seem quite personal and like that character, which must not be nice because I know you and I know you always, just like we talked about, you always do your best, but sometimes, it's out of our hands sometimes, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's one of those things, like the things we're talking about now in this section, the sort of the more negatives. It's kind of it's almost like a metaphor of the whole experience about going abroad and doing that, because I think one of the things I always kind of want to stress to people is that it is a mixed bag in the end of the day. Like, the bag will be full of amazing things, but when you go to another place, like what you've done, like in China and in Thailand, there will also be days when it's frustrating or there's parts of it that are not so great. So yeah, that's kind of the same for us. But I think obviously very much worth it. But maybe another one that's not so much a direct negative, but I think it's a challenge, and sometimes maybe an increasing challenge is sort of our role in placing people and what it looks like. Maybe to back up for a second, I think the general point I would make to people is that if you want to go to China or if you want to go to Thailand, you get a lot of benefits from working with a company like ours, like we've spoken about. It's going to be legal. You're going to be on the right visa. That there's some history with the school that will mean that you have a much better chance of it being a reliable school. You meet people in the process, and you have that person to talk to. I think a bit of a trade-off is that if you work with us, we want to help you move to where you want to go. We can't always manage it. Like, it's not always 100%. We spoke about, obviously, recently when we did our meeting for Thailand, for example, people who want to go to Bangkok. Our process is that you do the interview with us, you create a bit of a video of yourself. We will then share your CV and video with that school in Bangkok. And also in the interview, I want to give you a bit of a sense based on what I know of them, like how likely it is. So it could be that it's very likely, it's like 70% likely. But if we send your CV and video to the school in Bangkok and they say no, it's going to be a no. And that's something that we then have to reckon with, and you as a candidate might have to reckon with. So I think from that point of view, we need flexibility. We need you to be open to, I normally say 5, maybe 3 places where you really are happy to go. And I think, yeah, this is maybe a more recency bias kind of thing, because we've spoken about it last week. This week, I've spoken to 3 people who just said it's Bangkok or I'm not interested. So that is sometimes a bit challenging. My view of that, based on my own experience with China, and there's a blog on our website that speaks to this as well. My view is that worries me when someone says that, because I think, as much as a location is an important factor of how this is all going to play out for you, in my experience, which was wanting to go to Shanghai and ending up in Wuhan, it's quite a small factor, because like the vast majority of it would just be you're going to China or to Thailand or to Hungary, to Poland, and where you are is going to be a relatively smaller factor. So if someone feels like there's not enough in this experience, it's more about a specific place, I do feel that is a little bit of a concern in terms of maybe your wider motivations and your wider ability to do it. But yeah, like I said, we aim for transparency. I would probably say that to those people in the same way. but it's something
mean,
to think about. Yeah.
I definitely agree. I can see it from both sides. Obviously, I was in that position of a teacher when I went to China and then again to Thailand. And I think absolutely, I don't begrudge anyone for wanting a specific place. But I think what it's important to understand is, it's not necessarily easy for us to have partnerships with 10 schools in Bangkok, 10 schools in Chiang Mai, 10 schools in this city, 10 schools here, 10 schools there. Part of our job, part of the hours that I spend and the hours that you spend, we're trying to find new partners, whether that's Thailand, China, anywhere, Poland. So we do have many, many options for people, but it's kind of maybe, yeah, people need to understand that how can I say? Yeah, I going to the middle of nowhere in Thailand. This went in with an open mind, and it was the best thing that happened. So I think some negotiation and an awareness that we really are kind of trying
Yeah.
to get as many options. Okay, if we can't go to Bangkok, how about Samut which is closer? How about this place? We do negotiate and we are flexible, and we're absolutely not saying it's this way or the highway, but it can be a frustration when people are dead set. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. But I also feel like two things maybe. One is that we're still making improvements. We want to, deliver for people. And I think something we've just done last week, you and me, for the first time was the Thailand's placement allocation additional Zoom call to have a specific video call. And you did such a great job, obviously, in talking about Bangkok. What was it like for you? What was the pros and cons? Like Champfun, like Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, like so that people have a more informed choice and also have more of a sense of that there's so much to it. So that's a new thing that we've been doing for the first time this year for China and for Thailand. We'll look to roll that out for all our destinations, really, to have an additional call where you can not just read about it or see the salary and one line of information, but have a much more deeper call, with more um, with more information. And the final point I would just say is like absolutely, like our first priority is to get you placed because if you want to go, if you're one of the people who go to Bangkok, ideally you do go to Bangkok, and many times that does happen, and that's great, and that's the first resort. So that's hopefully going to happen for as many people as possible. Yeah, and in terms of the one other thing that's more of a challenge, I think, I'm a non-native English speaker who taught in China, and I loved it, and I had such a great experience. And I feel like I think as a result, like what's our orientation, our kind of our goal is to help as many people as we can and do it properly. But the issue is that, of course, one of our fundamental things that we want to do for people is help them with a legal and proper stay. And if in a country like you can't go there based on a certain nationality, we're not able to help as a result. But I do think that is one of the things that's a little bit painful. I mean, this morning when I was going through my inbox, there's probably I opened my inbox and there was like at least 9 applications I couldn't even look at really because they wanted to go to China and they didn't have the nationality that could work for China, for example, or the same for other countries, and that is unfortunate, but something that we're trying our best to work around where possible. And we've done a few times. We've been successful. For example, very occasionally, a school comes up in China that says, "Look, recruit a biology teacher. There can be any nationality as long as they speak fluent English." And this is one of, like I said, like one of our dearest partners, like in Suzhou. We're able to help someone from Zimbabwe kind of work there because that was a good fit and she had the right background and she's still there. So that's brilliant. And we want more of that, but sometimes we don't manage it.
Brilliant. I think yeah, break it down a little bit for us just in case people don't know this is the first time they're exposed to us.
Yeah.
Just what are the kind of general requirements generally?
So if we're talking about kind of the paid jobs of teaching abroad, as a graduate job, sort of for a longer term. In the countries we work with, it tends to be that you have a degree, you got a TEFL certificate, and you've got a clean criminal background. So that's the kind of the core three. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I want to teach abroad, but what's this TEFL certificate thing? It's not there's not that much to it in terms of this. I mean, there's an array of different TEFL courses online. We work with TEFL UK, who are a great company. They're super reliable. They're really well accredited. You know, you can go on this course and work anywhere really well. I would say the course probably isn't, 120 hours. It's close to maybe 10 hours. So yeah, you can do it in a weekend, basically. So yeah, out of these requirements, the main one is the degree. If you don't have a degree, it's trickier. Although if you're from the US or the UK and you want to go to Poland, like not having a degree would still be fine. And then yeah, like we're sort of touching on in some countries, it's the nationality is a key requirement. I think for China, it's basically UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland. South Africa is technically on that list, but I'm finding it recently it's harder for South Africans in China. So that's kind of somewhere in between. But if you're not from any of those places, China wouldn't work out. Thailand is one where it's basically the same kind of countries, but Thailand is also really quite open to Europeans. So in Thailand, we've placed quite a number of Europeans from Belgium, from Italy, from different places. And then you have worked with some of them or know some of them probably as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Thailand is definitely more open than China, I think. And I think if you are potentially Filipino, there are definitely many, many Filipino teachers in Thailand, just in case there are any Filipinos watching.
Exactly, yeah.
We can't place Filipinos in Thailand very easily at the moment. My message would be there are definitely of lots of African teachers in Thailand as well, but I just don't think they necessarily come through an agency. I think they would have to approach schools direct.
Yeah, and I think it's a key point because I would say even if there's sometimes limits to what we can do, I would say there's so much in this whole experience of doing this that I would say just don't give up and find ways to do it. If there are legal paths to do it, I would encourage you to very much to pursue it. Yeah.
Yes. And what about Poland, Hungary? Are they similar parameters?
Poland, like we kind of touched on, I think it's changed, and I think now it fundamentally it is the same. Like it's native English speakers from the kind of the core countries, the US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and Hungary the same as well.
But I think, like we said, it's not for a want of trying. If we could place everyone, we would, wouldn't we? It's more, these are the rules, and we've got to abide by them to be legal, to help people legally get their job.
Absolutely, and we're now what we're doing with international schools as well. We're just kind of especially with the international schools program, it will vary from country to country, and in specific situations what they're looking for. So we're looking, especially with the international schools, for places where there is that flexibility, where they're open to people from all nationalities as well. So yeah, definitely don't give up. Stay tuned, and if you're on LinkedIn, like get in touch, with me, and we do a lot of vacancy posts. So we're looking to offer everyone opportunities for sure.
That's it. Brilliant. Well, I think we'll wrap up soon, but tell us a little bit about summer camps, and the international school program. And then I think that will link into what's happening next,
Yeah. Absolutely. So the summer camps is quite exciting. I think you and I have spoken over the last 2, 3 years. We want summer camps. We've been on plenty of calls with different summer camps to explore different things. And yeah, this is the first summer really where there are a few happening, which is very exciting. So we've got the US, which is basically in a slightly separate category because it's not really teaching English, but we've included it because I know from a personal experience how great it is, and it does feel like related to this. Also, because if you do, like in my case, like if you do the US experience, you can then go onto these other programs and you have some experience working with kids and stuff. So it's highly relevant and it's a lot of fun. But that's definitely one that is very open to all nationalities. And it was interesting because this is our first year where we're going to have someone like sort of working in a camp, and we've spoken with the U.S. camps about quite a few different candidates. I wouldn't say I was surprised, but it was really evident that nationality truly isn't a consideration at all there. Like, we've had candidates, I've spoken to them about candidates from China, from Nepal, from Estonia, and they were all, you know, at good levels of English or totally fluent levels of English, and there was all very much like interest in them. So I think that's exciting. And besides the experience itself, that is an exciting element of the U.S. camps. Romania is similar actually because this year we've got a small group of people going, but there's a guy from China who's a student in the UK. We've got Australians, but like they too seem to be quite open to fluent English speakers from any destination. So it's a 5 week summer camp in Romania, and it's great because you get your flight reimbursed as well. So yeah, what's not to like? And I think all these summer programs, they're more, obviously more experiences. They're more experiences. It's not like you're going to make a lot of money doing it necessarily, but it's an incredible experience. It's a shorter term thing. There's less time commitment, and it could be something that could build up to a longer term placement. Yeah, and then when it comes to the international schools program, this is one of the key initiatives that you and I have been working on really hard. And recently we did a massive mail out to something like 700 international schools, and I've been speaking to a lot of them, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, just like speaking to the candidates, it's just been so interesting talking to these kind of newly emerging schools. We have Slovakia, we've got Poland, we've got Albania, we've got Lithuania, Romania, Cambodia. So we're developing a lot in that regard. And I think maybe the most recent one that I was speaking to was a good example of a real project and something really exciting, I think, to be part of because it's kind of a rural place in Denmark, but it's a tunnel they're building under the sea from Germany to Denmark. So that place in Denmark where the tunnel sort of ends is a place where a lot of people from all over the world have moved, and as a result, there's a big international school forming there that's looking for teachers. So yeah, I'm really excited about working with a school like that and these other schools because yeah, it's definitely a case where the schools we're working with they're only going to grow further as well.
Sounds great, but it does sound like the perfect setting for a Scandinavian drama, murder mystery.
Exactly. Yeah.
Body in the tunnel found.
Yeah,
International
true.
teacher, suspect number one.
Yeah.
Yes,
No,
fantastic. Yeah,
yeah, and then I think obviously one other thing that if you're watching this and you're interested in the future, I think something we've been speaking about this week very much is Australia, because that's something else we're working on. Big demand for qualified teachers in Australia. So yeah, absolutely stay tuned for that because that's going to be on our website in much more detail very, very soon. And very exciting. I think, you know, the things that we do with all the programs is obviously uh, helping people have an amazing experience, a good standard of living, a good, potential to save money and to develop and to make, build something. And I think the salaries on offer in Australia, which are for kind of new teachers, they're kind of around the 45 to 50 or sometimes even above 50,000 pounds UK for people with a QTS or a PGCE. It's incredible, and I think it's a really great opportunity to go have an adventure, but also save money. And this is kind of the same in a lot of the international school locations, I would say. Certainly in China as well, and to some extent even in Thailand. Like there are lots of opportunities to save money and to have a nice sort of style, you know, standard of living potentially in your home country. So yeah, really excited for that.
I mean, I think, yeah, one final point for me without trying to sound too salesy, but that is just the thing. It's the quality of life, wherever all our programs, wherever it's China or Hungary and everywhere in between, the salaries for the teachers are higher than the average like wage in the country, which means if you do live like a local, you can have a really, really great quality of life. So I just think, yeah, there's lots of exciting opportunity. I think Australia is one I'm really excited about. And I've
Yeah,
just
me too.
been started emailing Australian unis today, Arnold, to try
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
get into some Australian young people who obviously want to come to Europe maybe or Thailand. So yeah, exciting things on the horizon and brilliant to have Corey on board because I actually knew Corey in China. We were in the same cohort. We trained together and we weren't in the training camp together, but yeah. So no, well, we must have been.
I think it must have,
Everyone
yeah.
we
Yeah.
must have been in Beijing, and then she didn't. She went wherever she went. So it's nice to be reunited with her, and she's joined the team. So we're multinational company now. We've got London, Shanghai, Xiamen. Brilliant.
Very exciting. No, exactly. I mean, over all the years, with Teach English in China and now with Impact, that's been a real constant that there've been amazing people kind of who had to experience, were passionate about it, and then contributed a lot, over the years, so many people like Lauren, Fabienne, Laura, James, Kieran. You, of course, very, very, very clearly, and now Corey. So yeah, I'm really super excited about it because I think, yeah, you both know exactly what it's about. You've lived it, you know it, and yeah, it can make a big difference, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, I'm just off to meet one of our current teachers,
Yeah.
Josh, who I trained back last October in Chiang Mai. He's been in Chiang Rai since. So he's going to show me around this time. He's going to take
Exciting.
me
Yeah.
his favorite lesson. That's what I'll be doing this evening. Have you got any plans? Well, I guess it's a day for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a normal day. Well, I'm attempting a half marathon soon, so that's certainly part of my training, also to my day today, trying to put in some hours there. But other than that, yeah, a lot to do, obviously, work-wise, and a few interviews. But yeah, it's fun to do this. So we're gonna do it the other way around in the very near future. So look forward to exploring your Thailand journey and your China journey much more. But yeah,
And
want to just say thank you. Obviously, thank you for everything you've done because I think you kind of came on board at quite a crucial moment as we spoke about the harder times during the pandemic. And you've been obviously invaluable in terms of everything you've done. So it's been amazing.
brilliant. Yeah, no, it's been great. It's been really great. It's still great and getting more exciting by the day.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, look, just a little message to everyone. If you have enjoyed getting to know Arnold and me, please do consider following, subscribing, whatever the YouTube things are, following our journey because we plan to make more content, go to schools, visit schools, speak to teachers. It's one of our targets for the end of the rest of this year and in the future to really grow this. So please, yeah, do follow along if you've enjoyed this. And yeah, check out our website for all of the cool opportunities we have.
Definitely. Thank you. See you all
Well,
soon.
yeah, see you soon, everyone. Bye.
Bye.